When you hear the name Vince Gill, you think of smooth country ballads, Grammy Awards, and a career spanning decades. A man whose voice has touched millions, a member of the legendary Eagles, and one of Nashville's most respected musicians. But even Vince Gill, a man who could command stadiums with a single note, faced a moment that no song could prepare him for. For over 20 years, he had shared his life with Amy Grant, his wife, his partner, and his anchor. Married in 2000, the couple built a life centered on faith, love, and music. On stage, their harmonies were flawless. Off stage, they lived quietly, avoiding celebrity drama and focusing on family. Then, in 2020, Amy faced a serious health challenge: open heart surgery to correct a congenital heart condition. While the operation was ultimately successful, Vince experienced a kind of fear that fame and accolades could never shield him from. Suddenly, he wasn't the celebrated musician the world adored. He was just a husband, waiting in a hospital hallway, praying silently, hoping against fear. And 2 years later, life tested him again in a way that would push his courage, love, and faith to their absolute limits. Vince and Amy's love story had always been one of stability in an unpredictable industry. Married in 2000, they blended families and built a grounded life in Nashville. While the world knew them for their music, their fans often marveled at how quietly they lived their lives. On stage, their harmonies were effortless, a mirror of the understanding and trust they shared at home. Yet, like any marriage, theirs faced trials, some public, most private. In 2020, Amy was scheduled for open heart surgery to correct a congenital heart condition. Though she had faced health challenges before, this procedure was serious. Vince, accustomed to commanding stages and thrilling audiences, found himself powerless in the hospital waiting room. Every moment stretched endlessly as surgeons worked to correct a delicate problem. Fame, awards, and career accomplishments faded in importance. In that quiet hallway, there was only fear, love, and a hope that the woman who had anchored his life would survive. The surgery went successfully, and Amy began her recovery. Relief washed over Vince and their family, and fans celebrated the good news. Yet, even in the aftermath of a successful procedure, the emotional weight remained. Vince had glimpsed vulnerability in a way that stage lights could never reveal. The experience underscored how fragile life is. No matter how accomplished or secure one may seem, however, the reprieve was short-lived. In 2022, tragedy struck once more. Amy suffered a traumatic brain injury after a bicycle accident near their Nashville home. She was rushed to the hospital with bleeding on the brain. The music world, fans, and friends were stunned by the news. For Vince, the fear returned, deeper, more frightening than before. Brain injuries are unpredictable, and recovery is never guaranteed. Suddenly, the woman who had been his constant, his partner through decades of life, faced uncertainty unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. In response, Vince stepped away from concerts, canceled appearances, and devoted himself entirely to Amy. Hospital rooms replaced stage lights. Monitors replaced microphones, and whispered prayers replaced lyrics. Friends described him as calm on the outside, but deeply shaken inside. Nights were long, filled with worry and quiet reflection. He had to prepare himself for the unthinkable, the possibility of losing the woman he loved most in the world. This period revealed a side of Vince that few had ever seen. He had always been celebrated for his talent, awards, and charm. Now he was simply a husband showing unwavering devotion. Every day was an act of courage. Every gesture, from holding her hand to sitting quietly in the hospital corridor, became a testament to a love that did not waver in the face of uncertainty. Through this ordeal, Vince's understanding of life, love, and time shifted. Fame, accolades, and career milestones suddenly seemed secondary. What mattered most was Amy, her health, her comfort, her recovery. And through these trials, Vince demonstrated the most powerful kind of love, the kind that is patient, steadfast, and willing to endure hardship without recognition. In 2022, the world of Vince Gill and Amy Grant shifted in an instant. A simple bicycle ride near their Nashville home turned into a nightmare when Amy suffered a traumatic brain injury. She was rushed to the hospital with bleeding on the brain, and the news sent shockwaves through fans, friends, and the music community. For Vince, The fear he had experienced during her heart surgery returned, multiplied. This was no ordinary challenge. This was a battle against uncertainty itself, where outcomes could not be predicted and the stakes could not be higher. Vince immediately canceled his appearances, tours, and professional commitments. The man who had once commanded stages and moved audiences with his voice now devoted every waking moment to his wife. Hospital rooms replaced concert halls. Monitors replaced microphones. And whispered prayers replaced lyrics. Friends later described him as a pillar of calm, holding himself together even as he faced the unimaginable possibility of losing Amy, yet beneath the surface he was shaken. Nights were long, filled with silent anxiety and careful reflection. Each day brought new updates, new fears, and the need for patience that was both grueling and humbling. Unlike the stage, where audiences clapped and cheered for his brilliance, the hospital was quiet. There were no accolades, no applause, no immediate rewards for courage. Every small improvement in Amy's condition was a victory, yet every setback carried immense weight. Vince was faced with a test unlike any he had known in his career or personal life, a trial of resilience, faith, and unyielding devotion. Friends observed how he shifted seamlessly between advocate, caregiver, and emotional anchor. He asked doctors questions, tracked every detail of her recovery, and spent hours simply sitting by her side. Every moment was an act of love, quiet but unrelenting. During this period, Vince's public appearances were almost non-existent. When he did speak, it was with vulnerability rarely seen from a man so often celebrated for his composure. He asked fans for prayers, thanked medical staff, and spoke sparingly, knowing that the situation required more presence than words. The gravity of what he faced was clear. The final goodbye, he feared, was not a dramatic speech or public farewell, but a private, deeply personal reality he had to prepare himself for in his heart. It was a farewell he prayed he would never have to say. The couple's story during this period was a lesson in love under pressure. In a world where relationships are often tested by fame, wealth, and public scrutiny, Vince and Amy faced a challenge that stripped everything away except their commitment to one another. Fame became irrelevant. Career milestones faded. What mattered was life itself, fragile and precious, and the unwavering presence of the person you choose to stand beside. For Vince, nearly losing Amy changed him profoundly. It reshaped his priorities, deepened his understanding of love, and transformed the way he viewed his life and his music. The songs he had sung for decades about devotion and faith took on new meaning, colored by lived experience rather than just performance. His audience could feel it, the depth, the weight. The authenticity of someone who had faced real fear and chosen love above all else. This chapter of their life also highlighted the quiet heroism of everyday devotion. True love is not always in grand gestures or public displays. Sometimes it is in holding a hand through uncertainty, in staying beside someone when hope feels tenuous, and in preparing your heart for outcomes you hope never arrive. Vince's care and presence during Amy's recovery became the most profound testament to the love they had built together. One that had weathered decades of life's challenges and emerged stronger. And as Amy slowly began her healing, Vince remained steadfast, embodying the ultimate lesson. That love, tested in the crucible of fear and uncertainty, is not just surviving, it is enduring, showing up, and never letting go. Amy Grant's recovery after the traumatic brain injury was slow, painstaking, and full of uncertainty. Each day brought small victories and new challenges, testing both her resilience and Vince Gill's unwavering devotion. Rehabilitation required patience, therapy, and the kind of endurance that goes far beyond physical strength. Vince, ever the devoted husband, became her constant companion, her advocate, and her emotional anchor. The quiet courage he displayed during this period revealed a side of him that the public had rarely seen, a man who could inspire thousands with his music, yet who needed to summon the same discipline and fortitude just to sit quietly by his wife's hospital bed. Vince's days began early and ended late. He tracked her medical updates, coordinated with doctors and therapists, and offered support in ways that were both practical and deeply personal. While the world saw a calm, collected country icon, behind closed doors he wrestled with fear, hope, and the constant question of what if. There were nights when the future seemed uncertain, moments when he faced the terrifying possibility that he might have to say the goodbye he had always dreaded. Yet he never faltered. Every gesture, every hour spent with Amy was a demonstration of love that needed no audience applause or recognition, even as he navigated this personal crisis. Vince's music began to reflect his inner transformation. When he returned to performing after taking time off, fans noticed a subtle yet profound difference. His voice carried more depth, more emotion, and a vulnerability that could only come from lived experience. Songs about love, devotion, and gratitude resonated differently, as if each note had been informed by nights spent in hospital corridors, by whispered prayers, and by the raw awareness of how fragile life truly is. Audiences felt the change immediately. A man who had always sung about love now embodied it, in the most authentic way possible. The couple's experience also shed light on the nature of enduring love. Vince's presence during Amy's recovery highlighted the extraordinary power of simple, consistent devotion. It was not marked by grand gestures or public statements. It was the steady commitment to stay, to provide comfort, and to offer hope when hope felt scarce. Every morning he woke to sit by her side, every conversation with doctors he attended, and every quiet moment of reassurance was a thread that held them together. In these unremarkable yet profound acts, Vince demonstrated that true love is often quiet, steadfast, and unwavering, the kind that thrives not in applause, but in presence. As the weeks and months passed, Amy's progress slowly became more noticeable. Small improvements were celebrated quietly within their family, and each milestone in her recovery reinforced the bond that had been tested and strengthened by hardship. Vince's devotion never waned, and he continued to prioritize her well-being above all else. The world might have recognized him for his music, but those closest to the couple understood that his most remarkable achievement was the way he loved in the hardest moments of life. Through this period, Vince and Amy's story became a testament to patience, faith, and resilience. It was a reminder that love is not measured by grand gestures, accolades, or public attention. True love is proven in quiet acts of presence, in the decision to stay when the future feels uncertain, and in the courage to face the possibility of loss without surrendering to despair. Vince Gill's devotion during Amy's recovery offered a model of love that was raw, unvarnished, and profoundly human. In the end, the ordeal brought Vince and Amy closer than ever. The experience deepened their connection, strengthened their bond, and reshaped Vince's perspective on life, love, and music. For him, the trials they endured together became a living testament to the power of commitment, the kind that survives storms, perseveres through fear, and emerges stronger on the other side. Thankfully, the goodbye Vince Gill had feared never fully arrived. After months of intense therapy, hospital stays, and careful recovery, American singer-songwriter born 1960 began regaining her strength. Step by step, she returned home, supported by the unwavering presence of her husband. Vince, who had spent countless hours by her side through uncertainty and fear, continued to prioritize her health and well-being above all else. Their bond, tested in ways few could imagine, emerged stronger, deeper, and more resilient than ever before. In an industry often characterized by fleeting relationships and public scrutiny, Vince and Amy's story stood apart. There were no grand public statements, no orchestrated media appearances, no dramatic gestures for the cameras. Instead, Vince's devotion was evident in quiet acts, sitting beside her hospital bed for hours, coordinating her therapy and providing emotional strength when the situation felt overwhelming. Each gesture, though private, carried the weight of a lifetime of commitment, demonstrating that true love is often found not in applause, but in presence. As Amy gradually returned to music, Vince was there to encourage her, guide her, and celebrate each milestone. Their shared passion for music became a healing force, and performances once again brought them together on stage, though now with a new depth of emotion. Fans noticed that Vince's voice had changed. It carried layers of vulnerability and gratitude that only someone who had faced profound fear could convey. Every note seemed to reflect the quiet courage, unwavering support, and enduring love he had shown throughout the ordeal. This period also transformed Vince personally. Nearly losing Amy reshaped his perspective on life, priorities, and artistry. Fame, awards, and accolades that once defined public perception now seemed secondary. What mattered most was simple yet profound: the ability to share each day with the person you love, to support them in their darkest moments, and to remain steadfast even when circumstances feel beyond control. Vince's example highlighted that love is tested in silence, measured in patience, and proven by consistency. Through the trials they endured together, Vince and Amy discovered a renewed sense of gratitude. They celebrated not just recovery milestones, but everyday moments: a shared cup of coffee, a laugh, a quiet conversation. These small, intimate moments became reminders of the life they had built together and the strength of the bond that had weathered extreme challenges. Friends and family watched with admiration as Vince demonstrated a rare kind of heroism, one not marked by awards or headlines, but by dedication, compassion, and relentless devotion. The final goodbye Vince had feared, that unthinkable moment of loss, never came. And yet its shadow shaped him profoundly. It forced him to confront vulnerability, to embrace uncertainty, and to recognize that love is not always about dramatic gestures or public declarations. Sometimes love is simply the decision to stay, to endure, and to support without expectation of recognition. It is the quiet strength in a hospital room, the whispered encouragement in a moment of doubt, and the presence that says without words, "I am here, and I will not leave." Vince Gill has performed countless love songs in his life, songs that have inspired millions. Yet his greatest expression of love was never recorded in a studio. It was lived in the silent halls of a hospital, in the careful guidance of rehabilitation, and in the unwavering choice to remain beside the person he loved most. Through fear, uncertainty, and the possibility of loss, he demonstrated the truest measure of devotion. Their story stands as a testament to enduring love, a reminder that sometimes the most profound expressions of commitment are not sung or celebrated publicly, but quietly lived, deeply felt, and shared every day with the person who means the most. Vince Gill's journey through fear, hope, and devotion leaves a lasting impression. Love, when tested, can emerge stronger, purer, and infinitely more moving than anything that could ever be performed on a stage.